me. Is it okay with everybody if I start recording again? There, no, you're sorry that your introductions won't be saved for posterity, but all right, let's go back. Thanks for introducing yourself. So again, my goal here is just to help you refocus and think about what are the big picture questions you need to always, every time you sit down to write, remind yourself of, because it's I'm guessing that you're here because you don't feel 100% comfortable when you're writing applications, that you want to make sure you're doing it the best way possible, or you're not really sure about how to approach it. So these are, until it just becomes absolutely habit and something that you is just in the back of your mind all the time. These sort of, my PhD's in rhetoric, so I use the framing of rhetorical context are absolutely essential for you to always be asking yourself. And the first question you always want to be keeping front and center is, what is the purpose of the essay? So when you're writing a personal statement and a project proposal, or whatever other, an ambassadorial essay, or whatever the essay prompt is, think about what is the purpose of that essay. Why are they asking you? Because everybody has to, when you think about it from the funder's side, they have to read all of the materials that you submit. So they're not just randomly saying, yeah, send us a writing sample, send us whatever you think they have a very specific purpose for those essays. And you need to be thinking about, why do they ask for a personal statement, and why do they ask for a proposal? What do those things do differently? So when you think about that, because that's the most common thing, right? For application essays, is you submit a personal statement and you submit a proposal. So I'm going to open that up for discussion. What is the difference between a personal essay and a proposal, purpose-wise?
I guess something I would think about in terms of that is like a personal uh, essay, or I forget the exact terminology used, but that personal statement is kind of like insights into who you are and kind of where you're coming from with this proposal. Whereas I'm thinking the actual proposal itself is more on the logistics side, kind of the framework for how the project is going to be set up.
Right. Anybody want to add anything? Okay, that context I would add is, like, when you apply for a fellowship, you're applying for money to do something. So that's the proposal, is what is it you want to do? And how are you qualified to do that? Any proposal that you're making, when you're writing a proposal, whether it's a statement of grant purpose, or a project proposal, or a proposed academic study, what you're saying is, this is exactly what I want to do, and this is how I'm qualified to do it, right? And what I'll get out of it. So that's the purpose of a proposal statement. A personal statement, they don't want to know, you're not writing your memoir. They really, you're not just giving them like some interesting kind of glimpse into you. What a personal statement is, why they ask for a personal statement is, what is your motivation to do what you say you want to do? They want to know what is it about you as a human being that makes you motivated to do this project. Also keep in mind that if they're going to fund you, if they're giving you money to do this project, they want to know you're going to do this project. And then in terms of graduate study, they want to know you're going to finish that graduate program, because it costs your graduate, costs the funder money to to give you funds to do your project. It costs the graduate school money to bring you and support you to do your graduate work. They want to know that you're going to finish. So your personal statement is where you're making an argument that you're passionate about enough about and have the intrinsic motivation to get you through, and that you're sure you're going to do this work. Does that make sense when you think about the purpose? Other essays that might be included on the application will be very specific to that application. So I don't think the person who is applying for Marshall is here, but Marshall asked for an ambassadorial essay, and that requires them, what the purpose of that is to demonstrate that you understand what it means to be an ambassador and what your plans are for, so you're all of your essays are demonstrating something for your funder. So that leads us to the second rhetorical context of who you're writing the essays for, right? And that's the funder. That's who you're writing the essays for, is who's giving you the money. Why? And that has to be the guide for how you think about what to write and what the purpose is. So how do you determine who you're writing the essay for? How do you fill out a picture in your head of who you're writing for? For those of you thinking about Fulbright, who do you think you're writing for Fulbright, and how do you know?
I would say the government, because they're the ones funding it.
Mm-hmm. So is it just like, are you writing it for like Joe Biden's team, or government is a pretty shady, monolithic kind of thing? Who do you think actually reads these?
Yeah, I don't know what specific department, but some sort of department that promotes international exchange and sort of international relations, I would think.
Mm-hmm. It's the Department of State. So yes, it's the diplomats, but you want to think about that context really carefully, because like Fulbright is the Department of State is huge, and the countries are all over the world. So remember that if you're applying to Switzerland, to an ETA in Switzerland, the Fulbright people who are going to be reading that application is the Switzerland Commission, right? So it's important what do you think the Switzerland Commission cares about? Sorry, what do you have in your head when you think about the Switzerland Commission?
Okay, I found this on the web. Well, what do you have in your head
Sorry.
when you think about the Switzerland Commission? Check it out.
That's funny, Siri. Sorry.
Perhaps like they're looking for someone who like is wanting to like get involved in the culture of the country of Switzerland and like really understand. I guess like just someone who wants to like demonstrates that they like want to be fully like submerged in the submerged culture and just really.
Yeah, exactly. What they care about is their country, right? They care about that somebody's going to come and contribute and care about and be part of their communities. So if you're applying for Wagner, however, who are you writing to?
The university, right?
Right. That's correct. So that's a slightly different audience, but you have to keep in mind that they're going to also care about the experience that you're going to have in the country, right? So they need some demonstration that you're going to get something out of being in the country. So the easiest way to think about the who you're writing to is what are the criteria for the fellowship. So pay really close attention to what it is that they say they value, because that's what you want to demonstrate that you bring to the table. So the third context that you need to think about is, what is it you hope that they're going to get from your essay? What is the main thing you want them to understand about you when they read your essay? And this specifically should go back to the other two contexts. These all work together. So what you want them to get out of the personal statement, that you have a deep commitment and motivation for doing the work you say you want to do. You want them to get out of the statement of purpose, that you know exactly what you want to do, you are qualified to do it, and you're going to take that experience and make it translate into a next step, right? That's what you hope they get out of those essays. They meet their purpose. But what does that mean specifically for you is what you need to think about. Like when you think about, when I demonstrate that I'm motivated to go teach, when I'm motivated to go to Japan to do this research, what are the key things they need to know about you to see that motivation? What do you hope they understand about your motivation to go to Japan? Or what do you hope they see as your motivation to go to Taiwan? Like, what is it that's going to demonstrate? What's the takeaway that they need to have? So those are the three major context considerations that I think is the first place to start whenever you're stuck, or whenever you want to get started, or whenever you're going back and reading what you wrote. Those are the questions you want to ask yourself. Am I demonstrating awareness of these three contexts? Okay. Any comments or questions? Anything does this resonate for you or help when you're thinking about it?
I just have one quick question about, and I guess it's sort of specific to the Fulbright, but there's a lot of essays for it. And there's one that's called abstract or summary of proposal, and there's one that's called, I think, statement of purpose, and then there's the personal statement. So
Mhm.
how would you kind of differentiate? Like we kind of talked about the statement of purpose versus the personal statement, but then how would you differentiate the statement of purpose for the grant versus the abstract?
Yeah, that's a great question for Fulbright, especially. So what is an abstract,
Summary.
right? So why do you think they have that first essay as an abstract?
I guess my thinking was the abstract or summary is just very specific into the who, what, when, where, why, how, like just answering the basic questions. And then maybe the statement of purpose is more going into the so what of it.
I think that's fair, but if I push you a little bit, why do you think they require an abstract? What's the purpose to the funder for an abstract?
I guess so they can more concretely understand what you're actually doing before they assess everything else.
Yeah, I think that seems like a logical possibility. Like maybe it helps them. I think for you, it can be a way that you know that they know concretely what you're going to say before you go off on the proposal. But it's because they have so many applications, and after they've read them and they have to go back and review them, they don't want to read the whole application again to remember who you are and what you're doing. So I think it's important to think about the abstract as not just the who, what from the proposal, but a combination, a synthesis of your personal statement and your project proposal, like something
Okay.
that highlights your motivations, but doesn't go into any detail on it, just reminds them of what your motivations are and what you want to do.
Okay. Is it fair to say then that the abstract is the most important of all the essays?
It's the last thing you should do. I mean, it
Okay.
doesn't have to be the last thing, because some people it depends on your process. Yes, it's very important. Don't underestimate the importance and just say, oh, it's just a summary. It should be a very good summary. So you definitely want to, so in terms of process, which is what I'm going to talk about here in a second, for some people, writing an abstract is like really helpful to do it first, and then you can figure out what you need to build out in the other two essays. For other people, writing the essays is really helpful, and then going back and doing the synthesis afterwards helps you like reiterate what you did, helps you prep for an interview, helps you check that you have the important points in there. So it really depends on your process. But to answer your question, it's very important. Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you write your abstract first and then write your essays, I recommend you go back and double check that your abstract and your essays line up.
Okay, got it.
Great question. I think that gets at the purpose, really thinking about the purpose of each of those questions. I guarantee you there's no questions on there that don't have some value to the review process. All right, what I'm gonna talk about next is process, your process. We can be writing people. Writing is hard. People say they hate to write. It's hard to write. It's the reason people want to use ChatGPT. I will tell you that I get that ChatGPT is a tool for organizing stuff and getting started and generating. It's not a really useful tool because, and I'm going to tell you why. I think it's a great tool for editing at the end, maybe but also keep in mind, you need to be very sure that the fellowship requirements don't disallow anything that was written with any help from artificial intelligence. But I'm not, that's not what this presentation is about. What my point is writing your essays is hard because it's you actually discovering why you're doing what you're doing. It's not the writing that's hard. It's the doing the work of thinking through, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is the value? What is it I want to get out of this? What have I done? So it is the actual writing that helps you think through why you're doing what you're doing. You know you want to do it. It sounds great, but it's not until you get it written. How many of you, when you get a new piece of clothing or a new hairstyle, or think about getting a new hairstyle or a new piece of clothing, try it on and look in the mirror? Any of you do that? You look in the mirror ever? Why do you look in the mirror? And you haven't thought, it's obvious, right? It feels obvious to you why you look in the mirror, right? You don't know what you look like until you look at yourself in the mirror. You don't know if you picked a color that is good for you, or if you picked the right size. You might be able to tell size, but you don't know what it looks like. You have to look in the mirror to see what you look like, and if that's what you were going for. Writing is the same thing. And there's this sort of feeling of, people have this feeling like it should be all, you don't start writing unless you know exactly what you want to say, because that's how we think about writing, that there's this finished product. But writing isn't the product. It is, but it's first and foremost the process. So it's hard to get started because you're actually doing the reflection. I cannot tell you how many times I read personal statement drafts, somebody's first draft for a personal statement, where it's just like a lot of information, a lot of stuff coming out, and then at the conclusion it says, so what I learned about myself was this, right? And that's great. Those are my favorite first drafts, because what you did is you got all of the data out And as you were writing it out, you put it together. You thought, what does this mean? What does this mean in relation to what I'm talking about right now, or what I'm applying for? And you summed it up. So that, what that tells you is you're actually getting it out is the process of discovering it. And then when you read it, you can see what it looks like and you can say, oh, this didn't match. I thought this would be a great match for whatever, but it's not. So I'm gonna put this size back on the clothing rack and take another size and try it on, right? So that's what you're doing when you're revising. So that's what I mean when I say you know what you mean after you see it on the page. But also I want to say you think you know what it means, because that's you need to get that verified, that what you thought. This is why you ask your friend also, does this jacket look good on me? Or is this haircut, does that seem like a good color for me, or whatever? So I think when you think about when I say funders' expectations and who you're writing for, I can't emphasize enough that funders, reviewers for these opportunities read so many applications. They just read a ton of applications. So they have conventions, and everything you write either meets their expectations and they can go down the road, or it throws them off and they might stop reading, or they might just not get what you're trying to. That's why wit, being sarcastic and stuff in a short essay doesn't often work. And you only have this much time to ensure that your reader is with you. You don't have time for them to like decide if they like this book or not. They've got to be right with you the whole time. So you need to think about those conventions. And all of that is to say you need feedback. So it's great. I know you want it to be perfect when it comes out. It doesn't matter what it's like. Get somebody else to read it or talk it through with somebody to give you feedback on where you're going, so that you can get a sense. You don't have to take their feedback. They might, but you should listen, because they're telling you what they got when they read it, not what you intended, but what they got. And that's, somebody's going to be reading that essay, so it's important to know what somebody's getting out of it. So value the process and just write. That's kind of my upshot here. There's no wasted writing. But you also have to be willing to let it go, right? Put it back on the rack and get the size that fits you. It's kind of thing. Any questions or comments here? Did it resonate? Is writing hard for some of you? Yep. It is. I know that feeling when you sit there and you're just like, oh, I don't know what I want to say. I'll write and see what comes out. All right, let's talk about some tricks, some what we'll call heuristics. Do you know that word? Is that a familiar word to people? So heuristics are things that are designed to spur you to think, to spur invention, to help you think about something in a different way and get you working through stuff. All of these are there's a zillion strategies, but these are all strategies that I find useful, or I find that students I've worked with have found useful. The first one is timed free writes, where you don't put any pressure on yourself about what comes out. You just set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes or whatever works for you, and just write. And even if you say, I don't know what I want to write, I need to write something about why I want to go to Taiwan, just write that until you just kind of get into it, and you'll be surprised. Something comes up and you're like, oh, yeah, oh, that's an idea. So try timed free writes if you're stuck. Interview yourself. So almost all fellowships come with some kind of interviews. All of the internal fellowships, all of the nominations, you're going to have to interview with a faculty committee member. So anticipate what are the questions that people are going to ask you. why do you want to be in Switzerland? Why do you want to pursue this critical language in Taiwan or anywhere else? Talk about a time in your life where you demonstrated flexibility and adaptability to a culture. Just think about what an interview looks like and interview yourself and record notes of what you say. What are your answers to these questions? That helps you get some fodder. You know how you do those icebreakers, on the fun facts, what's a fun fact about you? If you're stuck, think about what you're proposing to do, and think about fun facts in your life about you that have any relevance to the country you're thinking about going to, the project, the proposal that you're making. What are some fun stories or fun trivia facts about you that relate to that? Those are things that if you can write those out, they might turn into anecdotes for your application or examples in your application, which examples, any concrete thing you can put in your application, or things you can bring into the interview later. So these are, keep a notebook and keep all of these artifacts that you create, because this is all part of your process and can be useful for later as well. Walk and talk. So stop writing, move away from your computer, get up, maybe take your cell phone and hit a voice memo, or take a friend and go on a walk and talk about what you're trying to write about. Talk about what it is, what your motivations are, what you hope to get out of the thing, what are some experiences, what are your qualifications, what are you worried about, why is this such a big deal? Just talk it out. Talking is writing. It's a form of writing. So if you can get yourself talking, what you're doing is putting the words to how you're feeling and that's reflection. And then you're able to synthesize that for yourself. So Robert, you've got a previous application that you've already been reading. So that I think is an obvious place for you to start. Josh, I know you applied for LeBron Smith. So and I think a couple other things, I think. So you've got those applications. All of you had applied to go back to your common application from when you applied to go to Rice. And look and reread it and think about who you were and how you framed yourself and what's different. Think about what's changed in that. Well, even for you, Robert, just a year. What's changed for you in this past year? What's led you to be able to rethink China to Taiwan? Those kind of things, and take notes on that stuff. I find a really, really helpful. I do this all the time when I'm thinking about like, why do I want to apply for? I tell everybody that if you're really stuck in the world, like you can't figure out what you're doing, your work is frustrating you, find something to apply for. Find something that seems really exciting and apply for it, because of all of this process, it makes you reflect on what you want, who you are, what you're good at, where you want to be. And so sometimes when I'm applying for things and I get stuck, what do I want to be? I don't know. I'll reach out, and in this case, I said email because it gets you writing, but you can call them or whatever you want to do, meet them for a beer, whatever works. But think of someone who inspired, or if you don't even have to send the email if you don't want to, but think of someone who has inspired your journey and email them and tell them what they did to inspire your journey and how you're feeling about what that influence was and what you're excited about next. That's always a great way to kind of help you articulate and synthesize all of the things, what you're motivated for, what your qualifications are, and what you want to get. And then the regressive why questions. This is, you little kids, when they ask their parents something and the parent answers and the kid says why, and the parent answers and the kid says, but why? That, ask yourself. So make a statement about yourself. I wanna do an English teaching assistantship in Switzerland. Why? And when you answer that question, say, but well, why? And you keep, if you have to answer all of those questions, you'll get yourself to a place where you've generated a lot of reflective material that's forced you to think more deeply about what you want to do and why you want to do it, and what makes you a good person to do it, suited to do it. So that's a really good strategy too. What are some other strategies that you can think of? These are just my handy dandies. What do you do when you're stuck? You've all been writing papers and studying for tests and all those things. What are some of your quick strategies?
I guess it's kind of similar-ish to rereading a previous application, but maybe if there's a certain topic that I'm stuck on, I'll read not my own thing, but like someone else's, so like a book on it or something like that to I guess get me thinking about it in a sort of different way.
I think that's great. That's great advice. Annika, did you have one too?
I don't think I have anything to add other than kind of what you've mentioned. I think writing that rough draft and like being okay with that is something I struggle with. So I think just creating a document, and usually I'll copy like my old rough drafts that are non-edited and just keep writing from there. So just having like a running document of everything I've ever written.
Yeah, that's good. I'm like one of those people that I write stuff and I never read it again. And then I do everything from scratch. And then I find if I think, oh, I'm writing this cover letter, I should just pull up an old cover letter. And then I pull up the old cover letter and I'm like, that doesn't fit this at all. That's not useful at all. So then I just rewrite the whole thing. So I do that with letters of recommendation too, with students who have asked me to write letters of recommendation. And then I'm like, well, how am I going to get this started? I'll just go pull up an old letter of recommendation. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with the student. And so, yeah. Anybody else have anything that they use?
Sometimes I find it's helpful if you're like feeling frustrated to go back to a piece of media that provides you like inspiration, whether that's like I don't know, like an article or a clip or like a chapter of a book, especially when it comes to applications that are centered on doing some kind of research, just like reminding me why I'm doing, like why I care about it, why I'm doing it in the first place, and it can help like just like get you out of that frustration.
Sure. That's great. I guess I could bring this up to the current moment and say you could do a TikTok about why you can, I mean, you can use whatever media, you can write a poem, write a song, anything that gets you out of that block, out of able to think about what brings you joy, because you're applying for stuff because you love to do it. You really want to do it. And the more you can capture the joy you get out of doing what you're proposing to do, the more compelling your application is going to be to anyone who's reading it. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. So what I would like you to do is to engage in a free write here. I think this slide's not very well organized, but I think talking through your plans is one of the best heuristics. So I think your first thing is calling up a friend and telling them that what you want to do. So here's the thing. I can give you free writes to do one of these free writes, or I could put you in breakout rooms where you compare and tell each other what you want to do and why. But I feel like the other ones are probably a little bit more. If I give you 2 minutes to write about what motivates you or the experiences or factors that you attribute to your motivations. Can you do that? And then we'll share with each other what that experience of just writing about not trying to write an essay, just doing a free write. Does that make sense? Okay, you can turn off your cameras. I'll turn off my camera and I'll give you 3 minutes to write about what motivates you to pursue the opportunity you're looking at. Okay, wrap up. Doesn't have to be complete, just a little free write. And when you're ready, come back, and anybody who would like to share.
I could, am I supposed to like read it or is
No,
it
no,
just like I could
well,
just
you can.
summarize?
You can certainly read it, but I think if you can just summarize, like, and if it was useful for you, what did it help you think about?
I think it was useful. I think it helped me drill down without like judging the writing because I think like when I am writing an application essay, I'm like, if I'm like, this part's already wrong. I'll be done now. I have like a hard time not trying to like correct it like
Mhm.
as I go. So I think just like word vomiting is helpful because then I'm not trying to like or free writing is trying to like judge it so much as I'm going. And I think for me also in my area of research in undergrad and what I'm interested in like continuing doing has to do with queer kinship. And so I think it helped me drill down like because I think a lot of the research can tend to focus on like very broad structurally like what things look like or and not specifically in queer kinship but like kinship in general or like what is this interpersonal relationship or like how should we be engaging with each other like what are best practices in terms of like boundary sharing space like etc. But I'm more interested in like how people build networks of relationships and what those like tools are for maintaining them, especially when you know there's like financial enmeshment and like emotional care that goes back and forth, and then especially like how that challenges like the need to participate in like greater institutionalized systems like marriage um and things like that. So just very interested in like how people actually like day to day like build out those networks like beyond like dyads and things like that.
That I love it. It sounds like you've generated some really good thought. That's consistent. Annika, you came back. Did you want to share how this worked for you?
Yeah, I think similarly, just free writing was helpful. I kind of was able to like generate something I hadn't really thought about before in the way that it related to my like potential proposal. So I think that was helpful because similar to Lily, I kind of get to judging myself on the fact that it's like an application. So it was helpful, and I'd probably do the same thing, but just for a longer period of time.
Yes. This was just a little snippet to get you started. So that's great. I'm excited to hear that you thought of something that you hadn't thought of before in relation to the application. How about you, Suri?
I would say pretty similar to what Lily and Monica said, because it was kind of like, oh, this is low stakes for me. So I kind of just like blurbed, and it made me think about like things like related to like education that I hadn't really like, thought about before, or like had been at the back of my mind, but I hadn't really like, brought them up. So I feel like it was definitely really helpful. I kind of talked about like my parents and like just like the values of education that they had instilled in me, and like just the like experiences that I had growing up, you know, being an immigrant and things like that. So yeah, it was really helpful.
Great. I love to hear that. Yeah, I like that. Low stakes is you want to turn it into a low stakes activity so that then you can really feel free and write and then go forward. Good deal. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, kind of just the same as everyone's been saying. I think it's great to do that sort of word vomit and just set up time where you're not really like critiquing yourself so hard. And I think that's something I need to get better at is kind of just like putting the words out there rather than thinking so much about this. But yeah, I think I definitely would do this again, but just like Annika was saying, much more time to really flesh out the ideas and just get more words on the paper.
I love that point. You can also, depending on who you are. So I always carry around a little notebook, and when I'm feeling things, I just sit down and write it. This is stuff that it's just, I've been experiencing deep despair with what feels like the finality of this country's democracy. So like I try and keep a notebook with me at all times just to free write when I have time. But it depends on who you are. If you like to work at a computer or you take your laptop around, there's all sorts of programs that you can shut everything so that you have to focus. You can't look at your social media. You can't look at this, that, or the other. But and just set a timer and write for 20 minutes or 30 minutes and just do that free write. And you'd be amazed at once you like push through the word vomit phase, how things start to synthesize and come together, and you build on those thoughts. So I'm glad you found that free write useful. So we're at time. My hope is that I appreciate you all saying that you got a little something out of the little time you got to workshop here. But my hope is that you all got something out of the tips and the rethinking about context, rhetorical context, and purpose and message. I invite you to reach out to me anytime if you want to talk through your ideas, if you want to tell me about why you're motivated to do what you're doing, and I'll take notes and I'll send the notes to you and tell you what you said. I've done that for many students. Please, everybody in the CCL is a resource for you. So don't hesitate to reach out, drop into advising hours or schedule an appointment. And mostly just go write, go get writing. Don't love the process. Any other last questions or anything? Okay, it was a pleasure to spend an hour with all of you. I'm excited to read your applications because I'll go in and read them all. I have access to all the applications, so I'll see what you wrote. You all take care and stay dry.
Thank you,
Hey,
Danica.
Yeah, Josh.
I have
Thank
a
you.
I hear you, Lily.
Sorry, Lily.
Thank you,
Thank so
Danica.
much.
Thank you. You all take care.
I just had like a couple quick questions
Sure.
about Wagner, but I wasn't sure if that was like the right time, so that's what I was trying to.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm gonna stop the recording though, if that's okay.
That work.